Now, China has received many high marks for controlling the spread of COVID in a nation of 1.4 billion, but doing that has its cost. What do you see from this decline in factory activity?
Yes, certainly the numbers, as you just previously indicated, are all going into negative territory. It certainly does appear that the impact of the mandated lockdowns, both in Shanghai and other cities, are having a rippling effect across the Chinese economy, thereby stifling factory output as well as consumer demand. And so we're seeing the evidence now appear rather dramatic declines month over month, both in the PMI for manufacturing, for exports, as well as for domestic consumption and services.
Now, of course, there are some economists in China right now saying the prolonged lockdown in the financial hub of Shanghai, as you mentioned, is going to have a significant effect on homes, the purchase of durable goods, and capital goods. How important is this to China right now, and what do you see for the future if these lockdowns have to consider in an effort to keep that zero tolerance policy?
Yeah, I think the central government has a huge challenge on their hands in trying to balance the need to abate coronavirus while at the same time trying to support the health of the economy. That when you consider both of these, it's very clear that the economy is being compromised at the cost of public health. And so the longer this drags on, I believe the greater the amount of pressures and problems will start to magnify within the Chinese economy.
Well, we saw it already in Shanghai to a degree, and it's a simple question. Is it time to rethink or tweak the zero tolerance measures in effect? But just using that term, zero tolerance, how much wiggle room is there?
Yeah, I think this has to be addressed amongst policymakers, because if you place the economy into hibernation and people cannot leave their homes, well, that's certainly going to have a great impact in terms of street life, in terms of the previously mentioned restaurant activity, service sector, and all kinds of goods cannot be purchased. And we're also facing significant external pressures as a result of, skyrocketing energy costs, the war in Ukraine, as well as, rising costs for agricultural commodities all over the world. And so being confronted with internal challenges as well as external challenges is, in a sense, a triple vortex that China is going to be, encountering in the near future.
Now, Arthur, you said that these are issues that have to be addressed. Just last Friday, the Politburo announced some significant measures: tax cuts, support mechanisms, especially for small businesses hurt by COVID, as well as loosening the government grip on internet firms and real estate developers. How important is this announcement, and how are you reading it?
I think it's a very important announcement. At least it demonstrates there's a degree of policy flexibility amongst the central party leaders to address, significant sectors of the economy, loosening the technology sector in order to increase employment there, as well as taking an examination of both infrastructure and other types of fiscal stimulus to greater sort of consumer confidence within the economy to get the economy back on the right track.
And let's not forget, for such a significant time, China was the economic engine really driving the global economy. But looking at Beijing wants to have a growth of 5.5% this year. Most economists say that isn't going to happen. And now, what is going to what is this going to do to the overall recovery in the pandemic, and even more importantly, to the global economy?
Sean, that's a really good question, because we all know, according to the statistics released by the World Bank, that China is responsible for 25% of the world's growth. And so if you take that away from the global growth equation, that means economies all over the world, including the United States as well as Western Europe, are going to suffer, in a sense, the decline of the Chinese economy. And so it's not limited to China. Certainly there are global implications to the global macroeconomic picture with regard to a downdraft in China's growth. And in terms of, China needing to, increase stimulus within its own economy, I think these are all, broadly speaking, very important measures that need to be addressed in order for them to meet that 4 to 5% targeted GDP growth rate by the end of 2022.
Now, Arthur, we're running out of time. We're kind of tight on time, but some doctors have said we could enter the endemic stage of COVID this year. If that happens, what will it do to the economy in China and the ripple effect around the world?
Certainly, it'll restore to a high degree, some degree of momentum within the Chinese economy and start to restore some confidence amongst its citizens and consumers that the economy and China has to, in a sense, live with COVID, in a longer term sense, and that the trade-offs of having zero COVID policies is certainly not the risk, not worth the risk of, in a sense, derailing the domestic economy.